think that's going. Great. Welcome, everyone. I am calling to order the April meeting for the VOREC Steering Committee. I'm Jackie Dagger, the Program Manager for the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative. And I'm going to jump right into our agenda because we have a full conversation today. So I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat. And we are here, we're starting our welcome and introductions. We have a full business meeting, which we're going to start at 10 a.m. We've got an update for you all on Move Forward Together Vermont. And then a discussion starting around 11:15, summarizing a discussion we had at the February meeting of the VOREC Steering Committee and encouraging further discussion and reflections on some of the outcomes of that conversation. At 11:50, we'll start to wrap up with public comment, and 11:55 a.m. with other business. So we have about 2 hours together this morning. Any questions about the agenda before we jump in? Great, and welcome, Frank. Seeing none, I'm going to lead our introductions. So as always, I see we have a number of folks calling in who aren't on the steering committee. We're really excited to have you here joining us, listening into the conversation. We know 2 hours is quite a long period of time to take out of your workday, and really appreciate you being here and your interest in the work that VOREC is doing. As I mentioned earlier, and thank you for everyone tuning in not on the steering committee, we do ask that you keep your video off and stay muted unless we're asking you to introduce yourself or participate in public comment. But at this time, I also invite you to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat with your name and organization. We'd love to have a record of your participation for the notes and for tracking who's engaged in these conversations. So I'll be asking steering committee members themselves.
Jackie, I just lost your audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back, but you were gone for a second.
Shoot. Let me know if that happens again. This new Teams is being funky. So I'm going to go ahead and have steering committee members introduce themselves right now, and I'm just going to go around the virtual room, and when I call your name, please go ahead and introduce yourself with your name and your organization. And I'm going to start with Becca.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm Becca Washburn, Director of Lands Administration and Recreation with Forest Parks and Rec and the chair of the steering committee.
Thanks, Becca. Heather.
Good morning, everybody. Heather Pelham, Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing and Vice Chair of VOREC.
Mike.
Good morning, all. My name is Mike Debonis. I'm Executive Director of the Green Mountain Club.
Jean.
Jean Gervais, President of the Island Pond Chamber of Commerce.
Abby.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby Long. I'm the Executive Director for the Kingdom Trail Association.
Drew.
Drew Simmons, President of Pale Morning Media, Communications and PR down in the Mad River Valley.
Frank.
Hi, Frank Stanley. I'm President of Vermont Traditions Coalition.
And Carrie.
Carrie Thomas, Executive Director of the Northern Forest Canoe Trail.
Thanks, Carrie. We have a couple of folks who couldn't join us this morning. Josh Ryan, Shelby Sims, and Fraser Blair all had prior commitments, although Josh did say he may be able to tune in, and Shelby if they have time. So we may see them join a little later in the meeting. Did I miss anyone on the steering committee? All right. I think that's everyone. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and have some partners on the call who will play an active role in the meeting today, introduce themselves. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Kelly.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kelly Alls, Executive Director of the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance. And so I'm pleased to be here this morning.
Thanks, Kelly. And Claire.
Hey everyone, I'm Claire Polfis, Recreation Program Manager with the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation.
Awesome. All right, so we also have some special guests this morning that I wanted to give the opportunity to introduce themselves. Alan, I'm gonna start with you, and Alan is calling in from FEMA and recently got in touch and was really interested in VOREC. So, Alan, really glad you can make it and want to give you the chance to introduce yourself to the steering committee.
Well, thank you. As you may have guessed, I'm one of those gray-haired retirees from the Department of the Interior, now working as a re-employed annuitant on FEMA disasters. This is my fifth and probably last, but I'm more than happy to make Vermont sort of my closeout disaster because I've found more resources and more interesting people here than in probably all the other four combined in a lot of ways. So I know I'm coming kind of late to the party, and I'm certainly interested in the ways in which we might be able to help, or I might be able to help. I've got a lot of experience in national service and its sort of benefits and uses, along with I've been a private sector developer of historic properties. I've run the tax credits on buildings and all the rest of that stuff too, besides having been a bureaucrat long enough to retire. That's me.
Thanks, Alan. Glad you're here. Thanks for listening. And then I also wanted to give Andrew, you the chance to introduce yourself. Andrew is with the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program and has been playing an active role with Jennifer in supporting our work on Move Forward Together Vermont. And so, Andrew, I want to give you the chance to introduce yourself to the steering committee.
Yeah, hi, good morning. Andrew Petitimange. As Jackie mentioned, I'm with the National Park Service in Rivers Trails Conservation Assistance Program. I'm a community planner. Have a background in biological sciences mostly, and habitat restorations, as well as park spaces and all different types of urban planning. And so, yeah, I'm kind of joining my colleague Jennifer, who I imagine most of you have met at this point, and kind of picking up where she might be leaving off as she moves on in May. And yeah, I'm just going to be kind of a fly on the wall, listening and catching up. I've been doing a little bit of learning through the Move Forward Together process, through all the focus groups. And yeah, I'm just happy to listen, and feel free to ask a question if it's relevant, but otherwise I'm going to kind of be quiet and just learning today. So thanks for letting me join.
Thanks, Andrew. Excited to have you listening in. And yeah, if you didn't catch that, Jennifer, and if you didn't know, Jennifer Waite is retiring, and the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program is continuing their support of our work. And Andrew is going to be replacing her in working with us on Move Forward Together Vermont and our work this year. All right, so with that, I'm going to open our business meeting. And the first thing I want to address is our meeting minutes. I know we haven't had meeting minutes to approve in quite a while, and I just want to reassure everyone that we do have the notes from our past meetings. They are something I am working on, and just if you have questions from previous conversations, if you feel like you missed a conversation and you need a reminder of what was covered in the absence absence of those meeting minutes, please feel free to reach out to me for any reminders you might need or questions you might have. And I am working on getting those together so that we can have them for the record and post them on our website. So folks who missed past meetings will have access to them. So as a quick reminder, this portion of our meeting, the business meeting, is intended to provide updates related to Vermont's outdoor recreation economy. We have a number of partners and staff who are going to provide updates during this portion of the meeting, and we do ask that we try and keep all updates to 10 minutes each, starting with myself. So it can be challenging. There's a lot to cover, but I think we can do it. I think I can do it. So I'll dive into updates from me as the program manager for VOREC. And the first update I want to share is about open steering committee positions. So we've been working for a while at this point on appointing Tommy O'Connor to the open seat for the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council motorized position. I'm really excited to share that Danny Fitzko, Commissioner of the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, has passed that nomination on to the governor's office, and we're just waiting to hear back from the governor's office on approval for that nomination. We're expecting that to come through in the next week or two, so I'll definitely be reaching out. I see Tommy, you're on the call. Glad you're listening in, and I'll be reaching out once we have that confirmation or more information from the governor's office. I'm also working on outreach for other open steering committee positions and working on getting in touch with some of the top candidates that we've identified. I won't spend too much time talking about Move Forward Together Vermont since we have a robust update later on in the agenda, but I do want to mention how much work has been going on in this large-scale planning process, including the public survey, which was launched in early March and closed at the end of March, over 20 focus group conversations that have been completed, as well as planning for the May 1st Vision and Summit, which is coming up very shortly. But again, we'll be discussing that later in the meeting. We've also been putting a lot of time and energy into organizing a focus group for outdoor recreation organizations and groups through the Vermont Conservation Strategy Initiative, VCSI. Which is coming out of Act 59, Vermont 30 by 30, as you all know. As some of you heard back in February, VOREC was tapped to host this focus group to bring as a multi-stakeholder group, bringing together voices throughout that outdoor recreation in Vermont. The conversation that we're organizing is intended to frame the ways that outdoor recreation strengthens conservation. And Becca and I, as well as Kelly from VOBA and Nick from BTGC, have been working together since March to bring together this conversation. And that conversation is scheduled for this Monday from 9:30 to 11:30. What we learned early on and why you all haven't heard more about this conversation happening is that the Nature for Justice, who's the consultant for this process, needed to cap the focus group at 20 people. And so we've been working together to create a list of invitees who really represent the nexus of outdoor recreation and conservation throughout the state. I know a number of you are joining on Monday, which is really exciting, and we're looking forward to having you. We've also been working together to provide feedback to Nature for Justice on the agenda for this conversation that we're going to have, and expect that it will be a really robust conversation. Ultimately, it's their agenda and discussion, but we have been doing our best to inform some of the questions that are going to be asked and the things that we know about outdoor recreation and conservation in Vermont. And excitingly, we also learned that Nature for Justice, because of the interest from outdoor recreation organizations in participating in these discussions, is scheduling a second focus group that's open to the public. Anyone who wants to provide feedback on conservation and outdoor recreation in Vermont will be able to participate in that focus group. We just learned this morning that that's going to be scheduled for April 29th from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. So if you aren't able or haven't been included in that conversation for Monday, that second focus group is going to be a really great option for participation and discussion. And I haven't gotten the flyer yet, but as soon as I do, I'll send it out to all of you so you can sign up to participate. I wanted to share an update on our sub-agreements with through the Northern Border Regional Commission with the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council and VOBA. I won't go into too much detail because I'm sure there's some updates Abby and Kelly might have related to these sub-agreements. But I did want to mention and just say how great it has been to watch the progress happening on these sub-agreements. Some highlights just for your all awareness is that the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council has now onboarded, as many of you know, a part-time program manager, which has added significant capacity. And they've been working on a cooperative agreement with the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation. There was a membership survey that went out this year or earlier this year. And they'll be using information from that survey to develop a work plan, as well as working on the creation of a partnership map to visualize the network of trail organizations in Vermont. With the VOBA sub-agreement, VOBA has been supporting outdoor industry involvement in Move Forward Together Vermont, which is really going to help the development of our shared vision and set of priorities. And also inform a work plan that VOBA is going to be working on. They're also supporting participation in the outdoor business survey that we're going to be launching for and encouraging engagement from outdoor businesses throughout Vermont, as well as working on a partnership map to help visualize the network of outdoor industry participants throughout the state. Lastly, and I know this is a lot of updates, but my final update is just about, well, actually, sorry, I have two more. So the first is, as many of you know, or hopefully all of you know, the Northern Forest Outdoor Recreation Symposium is coming up May 14th and 15th at the Mount Washington Hotel. I know a number of you have already signed up to attend this event, which is really exciting. It's going to be a gathering of leaders from across our 4-state Northern Forest region, and attendance is anticipated to be 180 businesses, organizations, municipal representatives, funders, and policymakers, so quite the group of people. And our hope is that this event is a catalyst for deeper, more collaborative work on outdoor recreation across the region. If you haven't signed up, it's not too late. The Northern Forest Center has extended the room block at the Mount Washington Hotel to April 19th as well. I sent out an email recently saying it was April 12th, but they were able to extend that. So again, if you haven't signed up to participate, we're expecting it to be a really critical event for our region, and would love to have you all there to join in the conversation. And if you need any details on how to do that, you should have received an email from me, but please also feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions. And then finally, before I turn the floor over to others to share updates, I wanted to let you all know that the Spring Confluence of States meeting is coming up in early May. I'm going to be attending on behalf of Vermont. This event is being organized in partnership or with the National Outdoor Recreation Executive Forum, which is being organized by the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable. That gathering is also going to be a pretty big event for national leaders. It's bringing together over 150 outdoor recreation industry CEOs, members of Congress, governors, state directors of outdoor recreation, and Natural Trade Association presidents. And the Confluence is also expecting to do some pretty big things. We're doing a signing for new states, which involves the state of Pennsylvania, as well as Massachusetts and potentially Connecticut as well. So a lot of Northeast states, or all Northeast states. Well, the Confluence will also be taking a vote on recommendations that have been made to strengthen equity in the Confluence Accords. This is a result of a work group that I've been leading, looking at, the Confluence Accords as they were written when the group was established, and making recommendations about, where equity language can be strengthened. There's also a recommendation to add a fifth pillar called outdoor opportunity that would really highlight the value of equity to offices of outdoor recreation in the Confluence. And it's a pretty it's a pretty important vote. This is the first time that the Confluence Accords are being amended since this group was established. So it'll be interesting to see how that vote goes, and I'm hopeful that the recommendations that we've made will be voted for. So with that, I want to just pause and ask if there's any questions, and then I'll turn the floor over to Becca for updates from the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. I did see some notes dropped in the chat as well.
Drew was asking where the Confluence event was, and I said it was in DC.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well then I'm going to turn it over to Becca.
Thanks, Jackie. I'll try and be quick. Lots of exciting stuff happening. I think in February we touched briefly on the status of the community grant program, but I just wanted to highlight again some of the takeaways from where we are in the process, just because it's pretty outstanding that we have this amount of money to work with. We'll be funding 51 total projects. We received 127 applications with nearly $22 million worth of asks. So we ended up being able to pull together nearly $6.4 million. We really rattled the couch cushions to make as much of this work possible, because the quality of the applications was like nothing we've seen before. They were all really high quality, and I think due in large part to all the work the steering committee did to redefine tracks that better align with community and nonprofit needs. So really exciting to see that the work we put into remodeling the grant program paid off by aligning with where communities and nonprofits are at with developing recreation assets and supporting their local economy. We've got a lot of exciting work ahead of us, and we'll be sharing out and hopefully visiting a lot of the communities that have this work underway. So kudos to Drew and Mike for their participation on the review committee, and Jackie and Claire and Lauren for all the work that they did to stand up such a robust program. We're in compliance check and scope development now, and the goal is to have these grant agreements in place by later this spring, which is huge. Any of you that were involved in a grant or know the struggles we went through for the last round can share in our gratitude and appreciation for how much better this is going because of all the great work that staff are doing and our partners. So that's a big one. That's really exciting. Act 59, as Jackie said, we're approaching the end of the inventory phase of the legislation for the 30 by 30 bill here in Vermont. The inventory phase included a number of very specific questions about how to arrive at an inventory of permanently conserved lands that fit into the categories described by the statute. Alongside that work, the Housing and Conservation Board had hired Nature for Justice to walk through basically a pretty robust public involvement process that is meant to help inform some of the questions associated with phase one, this inventory phase, but to also really set us up for success in honing in on the most important issues to Vermonters and leading us into the phase two conservation planning process. So as Jackie said, we'll have a couple of different focus group meetings for the outdoor recreation community, and that'll be combined with a number of other focus groups, interviews, surveys, and work group work that Nature for Justice is helping us aggregate into a report that will be due, I think, July 1. So more to come on that. Put a hold on your calendar for now for May 22nd. If you don't already have that on your calendar, that will be the next public meeting, broad public meeting for those interested in seeing sort of how that aggregation is going and where those interesting tension points or opportunities are being highlighted by this process. I expect when we have more detailed information, Jackie will be able to distribute that. So if this isn't already on your calendars, you can make sure to put it there. Legislative activity, it's all over the place, really exciting and pretty fast paced, as you're all accustomed to. 673 was the act relating to the outdoor rec economy, included a bunch of things that are really important to FPR and VOREC. That unfortunately didn't make crossover, but I think what we can celebrate is just how much awareness raising resulted from that. Mike Rice, the sponsor of the bill, did an absolutely outstanding job representing the interests of the recreation economy. And I think we owe a lot of gratitude to the Trails and Greenways Council, to Jackie, and to VOBA, really helping prep Mike to be that spokesperson for the rec economy. And my hope is that we're able to build on that in the next session, particularly knowing that we'll have a lot of data coming out of the Move Forward Together Vermont process, which Claire's going to talk about a little bit later. 687 is a monster of a bill about Act 250. This is one that I think it would take days to try and unpack for this group. Heather will likely have thoughts and ideas that she'll be chiming in with from the ACCD side. But for now, I think we're really just monitoring and trying to keep up with understanding the potential implications of this bill and have staff monitoring that for now, including the pretty extensive and high energy debate that went in before the vote on this bill at crossover. As 259, oh, Frank.
Yeah, on the Act 250 bill, I haven't read the version since it came over from the House.
Yeah.
It still has, does it still have our language in there, basically saying that trails aren't considered development in regards to forest fragmentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. That's a great question. It's like one concrete thing that we continue to look for, in addition to other ways that it could have impacts on recreation. 259 is an act relating to climate change recovery. This is really Mike Piechek's climate resilience funding. I just saw a note about a couple of public information sessions that have been published. I can share those dates with Jackie so that she can distribute them. We're actively working through Commissioner Fitzko to make sure that our program areas have representation. The Climate Action Office in the Agency of Natural Resources is the group that's really kind of being situated in a leadership role here on behalf of the agency. But Commissioner Fitzko is noting that program areas really need a seat at the table to be able to describe the different ways that climate resilience funding can have a positive effect. So more to come on that. S25, I think Kelly will be able to talk more specifically about where this bill is at. The note that I wanted to make was just how exciting it is to see that Commissioner Fitzko was in a position to be able to discuss this issue with other agency representatives that would have otherwise not been thinking about the impacts to the recreation economy in the industry if it weren't for VOREC. So I just want to point out, while Kelly can be the expert on the content here on behalf of VOREC, I just want to give us all some props for what it means to have this collaborative steering committee in place, because Danny never would have been in a position to be able to do what she did and have those conversations with the DEC staff that are working with this bill. So just wanted to highlight that. Really excited to see whenever we have an opportunity to really celebrate the tactile impacts of the work that we do together and the time we spend. So that one for me was a big one. The last bill, and the one that I think is just kind of heating up since basically last Thursday, is this act relating to regulating river core development. Essentially, it's expanding. I actually wanted Claire to talk more about this. I'll just say it's expanding the coverage of the landscape that would be affected by regulation, basically by about 200 to 250,000 acres and 45,000 parcels. So this is not an insignificant change in DEC's regulatory authority. Claire, if you want to chime in and give a little bit more specifics based on conversations you've had with Rob Evans and VTGC, that'd be great.
Sure, thanks, Becca. So this, as Becca said, this bill proposes to expand DEC's regulatory authority to most of the river corridor and floodplain, mapped river corridor and floodplain in the state. Right now, they do have regulatory authority in some circumstances, but it's much more limited than this bill would propose. In terms of, there's a lot of outside forces directing what needs to be in these bills. I don't know how many of you are aware of how FEMA's flood insurance programs are required in order for people to get insurance. And so the legislation needs to be careful in how they define development in order to make it so people are able to access resources. And so there's not that much leeway in, for example, the definition of what development is, which is any type of human disturbance or use of the landscape, pretty much. So it's very broad definition. Currently, of course, we know that the trails and other recreation infrastructure is regulated in many of these areas, whether it's for a river alteration permit, for a bridge crossing, or for rules about boardwalks or other types of trails in the floodplain. Our understanding is that a lot of the details will come forward in a rulemaking process, which is described in the bill, and would be very extensive because of how large, as Becca said, the landscape change is. And our colleagues at DEC are concerned about capacity to really fulfill all of the requirements in the bill with the capacity that's being offered. And so that's a really important point, I think, for everyone who engages in anything like a trail or a bridge in the floodplain, to know that the capacity needs to meet the demand. And I think that's what we're really looking at right now in terms of how we engage through FPR and in that rulemaking process that could, it could actually improve things and achieve more clarity for people in recreation, but also it's just an important process if it goes through, which will be ongoing for at least 2 years.
Right. Rob Evans asked, or the agency asked for 6 years. the legislature put 3 years in, I think. And similarly, Rob has asked for 6 positions to be able to fulfill the expectation for this. And I mean, I can't even think of the last time there was support for creating 6 positions. So it's we'll see how it plays out. And again, I think Jackie's set up every other week policy briefs with a whole range of partners, and includes Jill, who's the lobbyist for VOBA and VTGC. So we've been able to be really coordinated on this, which I think has been demonstrated by how well H673 and other efforts have been as far as us being able to leverage our perspectives and our opportunities, the levers that we have and the different roles we play. So it's been really exciting to be in collaboration throughout this session. And that is it for me, Jackie, unless folks have questions. And everyone is always welcome to just pick up the phone and give me a call or send me a text message like Abby did a week or 2 ago about a bill. Happy to go into more detail, but trying my best to be as brief as possible so we can get into some more engaging dialogue together.
Thanks, Becca. I'm looking for any hand raises or people in meeting with questions. And not seeing any, I'm going to pass it on to Heather for updates from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development.
Great. Thank you, Jackie. Good morning again, everybody. I mean, top of mind this week is clearly, we had an eclipse. It was fabulous. I hope that everybody doesn't forget that anytime soon. I'm sure that we won't, and I'm sure that our visitors won't either. So that's hugely exciting for us as a state. Preliminary numbers, 160,000, as I'm sure people have seen. We are working with not only partners across state government, but with other data providers to create a fuller picture of what the economic impact of the eclipse was. It's just that these things take a little bit of time. So we knew everyone would want to know on Tuesday, but you're going to have to wait just a little bit longer. I think in terms of so yesterday we had Tourism Economy Day at the State House, and one of the messages that I really tried to get across to folks was that the eclipse was amazing. By all accounts, the weather was as good as it could be. People were as behaved as good as they could be. It did happen on its own, but on the other hand, the great experience everyone did not happen on its own. It was a lot, months and months of planning, which was great in terms of creating those networks with communities and Vermont Emergency Management, with all the work with the outdoor rec, messaging around trails and so forth. And I really tried to bring home just the fact that it was an amazing windfall, but tourism doesn't happen on its own. It takes all of us to create those good brand experiences, and we can't just expect that we will see lines and lines of cars coming up the highway on every weekend to support our businesses the way they were this past weekend. So as wonderful as it was, it's really important for us to realize that the support that the power of tourism has to support our economy does not happen on its own. And I think people do understand that. Just before I kind of go into the legislative updates, I think everybody knows the Tourism Summit is coming up in May 8th to 10th. Would love to have folks from this community represented there. In terms of big news for us is that, people may have heard us talking about this EDA money that's coming to us that was part of ARPA for years and years and years. Finally got that last box checked last week. So we do now have full access to that money, which is very, very exciting. Part of it is a sub-award to Forest Parks and Rec for some projects that they identified early on that we didn't have alternative funding sources for, which includes upgrades at Bingham Falls, work at the Route 108 corridor and Smuggler's Notch, as well as development and safety upgrades at all the state-owned forest fire towers. Yes. There's a lot of additional strategic planning work that is going to now be unlocked. There's some workforce development work that's going to be unlocked, as well as destination marketing work and so forth. So more to come on that. One piece that I think maybe particularly interesting to this group is that even though 687 did not make through crossover, as has been reported, we did set aside money for economic impact studies in our EDA work plan. And so we are going to see what we can do to either carve out a separate study that may mirror what was 687 wanted to do, or otherwise make sure that we can use this money to 673. Sorry, thank you, Nick. To accomplish some of that work. I can't say it's gonna be exactly the same. We'll continue to work on that with Jackie and folks to see what we can accomplish with this funding source. I still would love to see the legislature fund that so that they are bought into the power of outdoor rec for the economy, but we are happy to do what we can to keep that work moving forward. Then just on 687, not 673, I think this is where it gets a little bit sticky in terms of, just different perspectives on that bill. I would say that from ACCD's perspective, 687 is a land use bill. It's not a housing bill, and we have a housing crisis. And that is really where the rub is. And so, I don't know how much time you want to go into. We do have concerns about 687, concerns that it is under-resourced, that we will not have the capacity at the state to set up the tiered system as it's imagined without more resources, concerns about moving the appeals process to, the NRB, ERB, which, may or may not actually speed up appeals, which is the whole goal. And just that it's not going to be fully implemented for another 5 years. And so S311 is the proposal from the administration on housing that provides interim exemptions. And so it's not just about Act 250, but there are other exemptions in there that will actually jumpstart our housing needs. And basically, if we don't see those two bills coming together, we're going to have some issues. So the session is not over yet. Hopefully folks are listening. Hopefully folks are listening to what the governor has been trying to say politely, which is that we have a housing crisis and we need to address our housing crisis. And that's the priority. So that's my update. Drew, yes.
Hey, I just want to say I had, during the eclipse, which I think we would all agree was a remarkable event, I had a unsolicited conversation with a ski area operations manager, and his specific quote was, I think the state actually did a great job in warning us about both the opportunities and challenges of the eclipse. And so I just wanted to pass that on, that all your anxiety dreams of the last year and a half were worth it. People appreciated it.
Thank you, Drew. Yes, I did share that with you. I think it's interesting. From what we've heard, everybody was on great behavior, and I think a lot of it had to do with setting expectations. So I do think that collectively, we can learn from that people knew there was going to be traffic. They knew what they could and couldn't do, and so it didn't become this point of contention. So
I had the chance to meet with, we have leases with 7 ski areas. Obviously, the northern ones were the ones that were seeing the most demand and interest. But having those conversations with those ski areas leading up to it and being able to collaborate both with GMC, other recreation partners, and our state land staff really was helpful. So, Drew, I don't know if it was one of those ski areas, but I'm glad to hear that even if it isn't, it was a good thing for all of those different venues.
Again, I wish we could do it again, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Go ahead, Frank.
Heather, just a quick question for you on the legislation. When we have, the Act 250 bill, which is supposed to be a housing bill, and then there's this river corridor bill, which I've just been learning more about. But isn't the river corridor bill directly in conflict with what they're trying to accomplish in the Act 250 bill? Because most of the river corridors, many are in downtown centers, so you won't be able to build housing. So doesn't it sort of take away the the value of the Act 250 to the administration?
I think there's a lot of conflicts, and I don't want to get out of my lane here because I'm not an expert on these things, but the point you're raising is that how are these things at all going to work together is very, very valid. And I think that I don't think any of us should be surprised if in a few weeks these things are not resolved, that this legislation does not go forward in whatever that may or may not mean. Because we can't be doing these things in silos. We have, I would say we have shared priorities. I don't know that we necessarily have conflicting priorities, but how we go about solving them really has to be in a coordinated way. And it can't be done in a vacuum. And in terms of how is this legislation going to actually impact actual towns and actual businesses and people who are trying to just live their lives in Vermont, in a productive way. So point taken, Frank, like this, there's a lot of work that needs to happen in a not a very long amount of time.
Okay, I was just making sure I wasn't missing something.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, great. And I did see Becca drop in the chat a suggestion to document the concerns that Heather is bringing up and to share those with leadership at the Agency of Natural Resources to raise awareness about those points of tension, especially in providing testimony to the legislature. So I'm going to move us on. I am curious, though, before we do, the S311 bill, it is one that I've been trying to highlight in our weekly legislative updates. But I am curious, just from steering committee members, if this is a bill you feel familiar with, or if you have thoughts on ways or things that we could do to build awareness around, the connection between S311 and H687, because I do think that is part of our work as VOREC, is this intersection of, natural resources and housing and things that impact, our communities. So maybe think about it now. You don't have to chime in, but if you have ideas, reach out to me directly about how we might be able to talk or think more about the intersection of those bills and issues more directly. Great. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Abby to share updates from the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council.
Thanks, Jackie. Well, I will start with just jumping on the legislative bandwagon. Heather, I'm really jazzed to hear you mention that you haven't forgotten about us and that you might be trying to sneak outdoor rec economic impact into what you're working on. Because as Jackie and Becca already mentioned, VTGC had been throwing their weight behind H673, passed out of House Ag, got left on the wall by House of Propes. But we, I was actually just emailing legislators this morning. We are still hopeful that legislators will put the study aspect, the economic impact study, that language into the fiscal year budget, the fiscal year 25 budget. We're currently asking for 200K. We could go down, but the report back part of that study is really critical. And yeah, so awesome, Heather. Thank you. Maybe I'll ping our lobbyist, Jill, who we've been working with, and let her know that there might be some other partners we can look to help continue that good fight. Jackie mentioned earlier in her update about the sub-agreements with the NBRC grant, creating a work plan with Vermont Trails and Greenway Council, and we are doing just that. We hosted just a few weeks ago, last week, I forget, it's all a blur, a full day retreat. I wasn't able to participate, but I had somebody else from Kingdom Trails go, but it was a wonderful turnout, and over the past year, it's been incredible to see the evolution of VTGC. We've taken on new responsibilities, expanded capacity significantly, hired part-time admin. So like now is truly the opportune time to discuss where we're headed as an organization, not quite our goals, but really what's our capabilities, our size, our model, more staff, board governance, financial stability, policies, procedures, budget, all the fun nitty gritty stuff. So it's really kind of cool to get down in the weeds and make a more professional, true organization. You know, we're even in the thick of a website revamp, and we'll have a new logo debut soon. So we're growing up. You know, speaking of more capacity, I don't have to go into details, but VTGC was a recipient of a VOREC grant, an accessibility hub. And it wasn't just Vermont Trails and Greenway Council, although we are going to house it. It was a true collaboration with Vermont Adaptive, Northern Forest Canoe Trail, Upper Valley Trail Alliance, VIMBA, and Community GIS. They're all partnering to address the many challenges organizations and trail managers are facing currently when wanting to build accessible trails. So it's really going to be an awesome web-based hub, a resource for everyone to look to for funding, building, maintaining trails, showcasing examples, how to do field assessments. It's going to be just a one-stop shop for all things accessibility. Moving on, Jackie wanted me to, it's kind of a little outside of Vermont Trails and Greenway Council, but while I'm talking, wanted me to touch upon the Forest Future Strategic Roadmap report. That was a report that just came out of the forest sector, but I did serve as the outdoor recreation voice on the advisory panel. The report's out, it's final, it's on the website, maybe Jackie could circulate that. And so it is just that, it's a report, but there are next steps for implementation because we don't want the report to obviously get dusty and just sit on the shelf. That meeting, I think, is in the next couple of weeks on how to make those next steps into action. And recreation related, actually just found out about this morning, but June 6th is the annual Forest Summit. It's going to be at Bolton. It's an awesome conference I go every year. Claire, I don't even know if you know this yet, but you and I are supposedly joining forces to create a workshop where we're going to take the Move Forward Together Vermont and take Pillar 5 of the Forest Roadmap, which is recreation related, and kind of converge and have like a genuine discussion and engagement with the forest industry. So what I love about it is that we won't be, we're not reinventing the wheel here. These two processes are happening simultaneously, so they really should connect and make sense and say the same thing, not be in conflict with each other. So I'm excited about that. So Claire will circle up about that. And then finally, speaking of conferences, the VARPA, Vermont Recs and Park Association Conference, annual conference, it's September 24th and 25th at Killington. There's the new Trail Symposium aspect of that conference, and submissions for workshops have just been produced, and we're picking those, and the theme of the conference is building pathways to resiliency, and I know that the keynote speaker will be Kelly Brush of the Kelly Brush Foundation, so that's exciting too. So you guys can put that on your calendar. And I think that's it from me, Jackie. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Abby. And yeah, I'm happy to circulate the Forest Futures Roadmap.
Cool, it's awesome.
Frank?
Yeah, Abby, as far as the money for the survey goes, just want to let you know, maybe let Jill know too, but there's certain bills that, haven't passed yet that have been appropriated money. Like one of them's H622, which was appropriated $300,000. It's like a EMS bill, and it's just being taken up in the Senate. Of course, there's only really 4 weeks left. So if that bill doesn't make it, that means there's $300,000 freed up in the budget. So you guys might want to talk to Ginny Lyons or say, hey, if that bill doesn't go through, I got an idea for where we can put that money. You know what I'm saying? It's the same with the Act 250 bill. I think that's got a $1.9 million appropriation in it, but I'm sure it's going to pass, but it might get vetoed. But
awesome.
Anyways, I was just letting you know to keep an eye on other bills, because a lot of bills do have money appropriated, and when they fail, they're going to try to find another home for that money. Okay.
Great. Yeah, it's Nick just shared. It sounds like Jill's actively on it and was on the phone with Ginny yesterday. So thank you. That's awesome.
Great. With that, I'm going to pass on to Kelly for the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. And thanks to everyone for all of the really amazing updates. We're doing incredible work and it's nice to work with you all. I won't duplicate some of the updates that have already been shared, except to maybe share the business element to it. I'll start with policy and then end with Move Forward Together Vermont, because that might segue into the next discussion. As many of you participated in Outdoor Recreation Day, we really created some momentum in February for outdoor recreation and the kind of opportunities for policy that we wanted to shore up and tell stories about. And I think that was evident on Tourism Day at the State House yesterday. It was a wonderful day, again, with advocates coming to the State House, providing testimony to legislators, to committees, and also just identifying all the ways that our visitor economy really supports Vermont communities, and how outdoor recreation is an integral part to that. It reinforced a couple issues that we've already talked about today, and I'll add a few more. The outdoor rec bill, as has been mentioned, we're pretty excited about the response to the idea to create a comprehensive economic impact study. And there's a lot of positive, and I think the sticking point around funding has already been covered. And this situation, as others have said, is still live. And so there is an encouragement to send emails to Senate Appropriations and Institution Committee members. And I'm happy to provide some messaging, or others on this call can provide messaging to put in those correspondences to just elevate the importance of this study and this work. So hopefully that we'll still have opportunities in the Senate, or alternative opportunities as have been mentioned. I'll mention the PFAS bill, as it hasn't been discussed yet on this call, but except by Becca talking about Commissioner Fitzco's support to the Human Services Committee. We testified a few weeks ago after bringing together Vermont manufacturers and retailers to look at the language that was passed in Senate Health and Welfare and to make sure that it works for industry. Obviously, industry supports removing forever chemicals and phasing out these products, but just wants to ensure that there's a timeline that can support the alternative technologies, support retailers in being able to sell through existing or inventory that is already being manufactured right now. And so we just reinforced some of those pieces, and we are supportive of the timelines that have been passed out in the House. I think it was passed out in its third reading, or had a third reading yesterday. And the timelines seem to work not just for manufacturing, but for selling through. There is a downward adjustment in the threshold, and that might affect the ability of some manufacturers to use recycled content, because so much of that circular economy and the work happening is still unfolding, and it's not quite determined exactly how that can meet the threshold. So that is one area that we're looking closely at, but we're grateful for the support from FBR and others to be able to weigh in and support this important legislation and businesses in their sustainability goals. The Flood Recovery Assistance Program is another proposal that we continue to work with the Vermont Trails and Greenways Council, Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility, Montpelier Alive, and several regional development corporations, as well as the Vermont Professionals of Color Network, to support $40 million in the budget that can help some of the businesses and nonprofits with unmet needs from last year's flooding, to help them become whole and help them get on solid footing. And also to invest in those climate mitigation and resiliency measures so they can be more prepared for future climate disruptions. The funding was not put in the House, although we were able to provide testimony in House Commerce, and even in House Commerce, and provide businesses to speak at press conferences. And Jen Roberts from Onion River Outdoors spoke at a hearing last Friday in Senate Economic Development about their experience, and the experience of some businesses in some of our downtowns like Montpelier. So there are still some hopeful opportunities in the Senate. So if you want to contact me with details about support for flood funding, we see this as really a foundation, a stepping stone to continuing to talk about climate investments in the future. So with that, I'll just move into our Moving Forward Together Vermont updates, as I know we're a little over time here. But as Jackie mentioned, we are excited to be in our cooperative work with Jackie and others in the outdoor sector to develop a process. And we've been working for the last 3 months to develop 4 focus groups, which have been initiated beginning in March and will go through July to try to identify the opportunities, gaps, and resources for the outdoor sector and really help contribute the industry perspective to envisioning a vision and strategies for the next 5 years. We have hired wonderful facilitators, Holly Fowler from Northbound Venture Consulting and Megan McConnell from Park Street Community Solutions, who lend a lot of experience in these type of conversations to facilitate our process. And today is our second session, and I'm here at CCV for our afternoon in-person workshop with educators. The first session in March primarily focused on businesses from around the state, representing different areas of the industry to really feed in on what they felt was important for business development. And today we'll continue that conversation, but also add how we can develop career pathways and support workforce training, career exploration, and many other opportunities to recruit and retain a workforce for a future that's based in being climate resilient, equitable, based in innovation and sustainability. So we're excited about these conversations. I want to flag our June effort, which will bring funders and service providers to the table to talk through some of the big ideas that we're all generating, provide feedback, and talk about ways that support networks and other resources could come to bear and partnerships that could be forged to work towards our vision. I did just want to provide a few takeaways from our March event, just perhaps to seed the next conversation. And again, this is primarily businesses that were on the call. We had about 25 attend on March 27th. And just some of the ideas that they brought forward was to continue to see the value in technical assistance and financing of small and mid-sized companies. They benefit from support from each other, as well as investment. It leads to their growth. And we're also excited about the leveling up efforts of established companies that are going above and beyond business practices and becoming B Corps. They're leading on sustainability efforts in our manufacturing sector in Vermont. They want to keep production here, and we're really excited about the promise of that. Another idea is a reminder that we have a robust network of outdoor creatives in our state, several of them on this on this VOREC steering committee. That could be better leveraged to tell our stories, elevate our businesses and products. And building on Heather's update, we have a tremendous opportunity to market the stories, our businesses, our products, and cultivate this tourist economy, which especially helps our retailers and our downtowns. A few more quick notes, and then I'll wrap it up. There was excitement about the professionalism of trail building, and that we are seeing these seasoned crews and certifications, such as the work that's happening at Vermont State University in the Sustainable Trail Building Certificate and the KTA boot camps. And that's really allowing for stewardship and maintenance of our world-class assets. In our conversations about career pathways, that group was really enthusiastic about the idea for really educating our youth, telling them about our industry, involving them in all aspects of business operations. As one business put it, today's student is tomorrow's CEO. And lastly, continued peer support. Businesses express the value of networking, getting together, sharing information, and collaborating for their own growth and learning. And as one business put it, your success is my success. So we're really excited about the work moving forward and how we can integrate what we're learning into VOREC statewide process, as well as develop a plan for VOBA moving forward. And there's a bright future. So with that, I'll wrap it up, and please feel free to come on over to CCV this afternoon for our career pathways conversation, as well as email me with any questions, and we'd love to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Wow, I'm just so excited to hear all of the updates and things happening throughout Vermont's outdoor recreation economy. I just love to hear the partnership building that's happening and the strengthening of the work and the conversations that we're capitalizing on, we're leveraging as as part of what we do through the VOREC program. I hope you guys heard some of that too. I just think back to like 3 years ago when I came on board and we had these business meeting updates and how those updates have evolved to that point, and just wanted to take a moment to recognize that, and also to connect it to what we're doing with Move Forward Together Vermont. Because all of these connections that we're starting to strengthen, the things that we're starting to work on as partners in VOREC, in our work throughout the state on outdoor recreation, I think that's the whole point of Move Forward Together Vermont. We're, doing this large scale planning process to help all of the partnerships we're creating, the strengthening of outdoor recreation throughout our state, to give ourselves a common agenda, to give ourselves a more umbrella vision and set of priorities for how we're working on outdoor recreation together. And I'm curious, before we jump into the next part of our agenda, we're going to be giving you an update on Move Forward Together Vermont, how it's going, and then we're going to have a more focused discussion coming out of our February meeting about, VOREC as a program, next steps we should be thinking about in terms of supporting the vision and priorities that come out of Move Forward Together Vermont. But before we dive into that, I wanted to pause and kind of ask you all, have you been hearing about Move Forward Together Vermont in your various communities? Just curious if you've heard about Move Forward Together Vermont in any surprising places that you didn't expect, just to start the conversation. And maybe places that didn't come from me or Claire. Well, maybe not.
But I mean, what I just mentioned, the Forest Summit, getting a call from Christine McGowan from Vermont Sustainable Jobs to have it loop back to this was cool and makes sense.
Great. Well, I asked because we have been getting significant participation in the process. A lot of people engaging through the public survey and the focus groups we've been running. I do hope that folks are talking about Move Forward Together Vermont and outdoor recreation in various places that we're tuned into. But right now, what we're going to do is give you an update on Move Forward Together Vermont, and a little bit of background on what's been happening and what to expect as we move closer to the May 1st Vision and Priorities Summit. That's just in a few weeks now. So Claire, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you to share some information about the public survey and some of the data that we've been collecting.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, I'll take the data side, and Jackie's going to talk more about our focus groups. And we have been working on all of it together, and that's been, I think, a really great process for expanding the reach of the Move Forward Together Vermont process, using both the resources within FPR and the resources that VOREC brings to the process. We, as I think you all should know, we launched a public survey, an open web survey, in the beginning of February. It was open for about 7 weeks and closed on March 31st. And we got 1,800 respondents, which is really huge. I think it's one of the largest. Well, I know that it's the largest through SCORPS that we've ever gotten, but I think it's a relatively large sample size of people interested in outdoor recreation. I haven't seen the results yet. I'm really eager. Nick, nice. It will be Nick's times 1,799 in my one response that I put in as an outdoor recreationist in Vermont. So, but I haven't seen the results yet. I'm really curious to see how they play out. As you all know, like an open web survey, it was shared by many of you. It went out in the tourism newsletter. Thank you, Heather. So we've got some folks who visit Vermont, which is also really important for our work. And then we've got a lot of people in Vermont, shared by many of the outdoor recreation groups. We shared it through libraries, through religious institutions, through towns. And hopefully we have a wide variety of interests. We weren't trying to be statistically representative because we just wanted to engage people and hear from them. But we also ran a panel survey. And what a panel survey is a more randomized sample of Vermonters. You have to sign up to take panel surveys, so it's a little bit constrained by that. But it's a really common way to get a more statistical representation. And we did achieve that. We got a 95.5% interval, or blanking on how you say the word, but what that means is we're 95% sure that this is a good representation of Vermont. We're putting together those results, and I have seen those results. And then we'll compare them also to the open web survey, as well as combine them for certain questions. You don't want to combine them for all questions because like a statistical representation of the state is different than people who are particularly engaged and interested in recreation, and both of those types of voices are really important. So we're putting together all of this information for our May 1st summit, which I think Jackie's going to get a little more into later. So you guys, everyone on the steering committee will see both like a summarized version of this data, and then we're also giving people not raw data. We're not going to get spreadsheets, but the base data that we're summarizing from, so you can see that as well. We also, the Vermont Recreation Professionals Association, VRPA, redid their state of recreation survey that they first had done 5 years ago. And that's for groups that provide recreation, and a lot of like town-based municipalities, as well as nonprofit organizations. They got 36 respondents, and it's really interesting to see like where the challenges are right now with providing recreation. And one thing to note is in the last 5 years, a very small percentage of those organizations got smaller. And the vast majority, I think it's like 80 to 90%, either stayed the same or got larger. So that's just an indication of how important groups like that are. Finally, the last data that we're doing is updating the state trails GIS layer. This is a lot of work. If you guys know about GIS, what we're doing is we have a number of large data sets for trails in Vermont, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses. And what we're trying to do is put them together so we get more strengths than weaknesses out of it. That includes E911, Trail Finder data, our state data on state lands, and then the Forest Service. So we're putting all that together, like getting rid of overlaps, making like at least the spatial data as good as we can. Then we'll be adding activities to that, and we'll have a much better idea of what trail-based recreation is actually available on the landscape and where. We likely won't get to a super beautiful, clean data set by the end of this. It will be a longer process than we maybe had hoped, but I think it'll be a really good resource. And then from there, we can also think about what other types of recreation we need to know where they are in the landscape, and build off of that trails layer with more data. Does anyone have any questions about the surveys and stuff? Heather.
I just had a question on the timeline. I know you said, Claire, it's going to take a while. Is a while? Can you quantify the timeline on that?
So the reason that I say that is, So the SCORP section of Move Forward Together Vermont, which is how we get Land and Water Conservation Fund and Recreational Trails Program funding, is due by the end of the year. And we will have, and this process of updating the trails data is part of that. And so we will have something. We have the physical locations pretty well. It's those attributes that we need to update and may not be fully updated. There's also going to have to be some outreach and quality control and review by partners that may or may not happen, but we'll have an idea of like total mileage, an estimate of total mileage of trails and approximate and like locations based by this fall. Is that? The only other thing I wanted to mention really quickly, Jackie, is that the data from these surveys, particularly that open web survey and the statistically representative survey, is going to inform this process, and it's really exciting to see that, but we can't use all of that data. Like, there's so many more questions that we could ask based on those results, so much more that we could see if we would analyze further, and we're not going to have the resources to do that, or just questions that aren't necessary for Move Forward Together Vermont, but might be really important for other organizations or academics. And we are going to make that data available at the end of the process for people to use. We're particularly interested in engaging with UVM and other academic institutions on it, but I think for other organizations that could be really useful as well. And so that's just something, and other agencies within the state government. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's not going to just be used for this process. Like, we're hoping it can be used on a wider basis because as you know, we've put a lot of resources and time into it, and we want to be able to get as much out of it as we can.
Thanks, Claire. I want to recognize we are spending a lot of time on presentations during this meeting. This is sort of our opportunity to share some information, talk about any questions as a group before the May 1st meeting. So we really wanted to make sure that you as a steering committee and really important partners in making these decisions on May 1st had a really good foundation and understanding of all of the work that's been happening, so that you can bring that to prep ahead of the May 1st meeting. I'm going to talk at you just a little bit more before we get into more of an interactive conversation, and I hope that this is helpful for you all. But in addition to the data that we've been collecting, we've also been running focus groups, and we've completed 26 focus groups with 100 participants and over 82 organizations. So just the amount of engagement and breadth of engagement that we've had is really huge. 80% of those participants were non-state employees and 20% were state employees. Really, like, we wanted to reach some resource providers as well as a lot of communities who we might not have engaged with as directly in the past, or we knew might not show up and participate as directly in a survey. All of the focus groups that we've conducted were asked for core questions. And those were questions about specific opportunities for outdoor recreation, gaps that exist in strengthening outdoor recreation, and what might be preventing that from happening, the resources needed to be successful, as well as knowing that we're looking at a 5-year scope. What would success look like in 5 years to try and get at that, those priorities people might have, or what might be accomplishable in the next 5 years. Any questions about focus groups and then or the data? And then I'm just going to briefly talk about prep ahead of the May 1st meeting. Great. So we are getting ready in a few weeks to have this Vision and Priorities Summit, which is really critical to the Move Forward Together Vermont process on May 1st. You should have all received a calendar hold from me. I recently updated that with the location for the meeting. We are going to be meeting at Camp Plymouth. It is going to be a 5-hour conversation, so a full day meeting. And we will be providing lunch, so don't worry about bringing your own lunch. We are going to be ordering that in advance. The meeting will be facilitated. The Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program has helped us bring on Kearns and West to facilitate and design our conversation, since we are, as you heard, going to be working with a really robust set of information. So during the summit, we'll be using the data that's been gathered through the surveys, through focus groups, to make decisions about Vermont's vision for outdoor recreation over the next 5 years and our priorities for achieving that vision. The summit is really going to be focused on helping us make decisions. So you, as really important representatives of the outdoor recreation community in Vermont, are going to be really important participants, along with the members of the Technical Advisory Committee for the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. You can expect to get pre-meeting materials. These are going to need to be fairly robust because, as you heard, we've been collecting a lot of data. We are committed to sending that pre-meeting material out to you by end of day on April 22nd. So please, now if you can look ahead, please expect to set aside some time to look through those materials ahead of the meeting. Our goal is not to spend a lot of time going through the intricacies of that data, because we are giving folks 2 weeks to look through the information. We want to spend the majority of the summit working on making decisions, as I said, and we will present it at a high level, but I think, coming prepared, having looked through the pre-meeting materials will really be helpful, since we won't be diving into them in very much detail. So right now we're working through some final logistics ahead of the meeting. We are hoping to get a sense of we have the meeting hold, but we do also have a pre-meeting poll just to get any final confirmation from you about your attendance. We also have a space for you to know any dietary restrictions you have, because again, like I said, we're going to be providing lunch, as well as a space for you to know if you're interested in carpooling. So I'm going to be sending that poll out after this meeting, but I would also like to drop that into the chat right now in case you want to.
I just did. Sorry.
Oh, you
Jackie.
did? Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Claire. That's super helpful. So you have that poll in the chat. You can go ahead and take it right now if you'd like, or you can wait until I send it out after the meeting. And with that, I am going to I'll pause and ask, are there any questions right now about the May 1st Summit, what we've been working on with Move Forward Together Vermont? I definitely want to make sure that we address any of those questions you might have now. Great. And seeing none, please also feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to jump onto a call and talk through the work that we've been doing with you if needed, and really hope to see all of you on May 1st for that important conversation. Great. So now, finally, we're going to get into some more interactive, more discussion. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You should have all received this summary from me ahead of this meeting, noting outcomes from a discussion we had during our February in-person meeting in Killington, Vermont. During that meeting, we had a really great conversation, and others who were there can chime in. But we had a really great conversation about, going through Move Forward Together Vermont. We're going to come out at the end of this year with this set of vision and priorities that is going to be informed by decisions you have made, decisions other leaders in outdoor recreation in Vermont have made. And VOREC, as the body, the state body that is intended to convene partners, bring together folks in Vermont's outdoor recreation economy to work on landscape scale strategies, efforts in Vermont to strengthen outdoor recreation. VOREC is a really important body, or will be, in activating on this vision and set of priorities. So the conversation we had in February was about, we can be proactive right now in thinking about how VOREC as a program, us as a steering committee, might want to explore things that we need to figure out regarding the program and how we're structured to be able to activate this network of partners at the end of this year. This is a conversation I think we're going to be having throughout this year. And right now, what we're doing is highlighting some of those things that we want to dig into and have more discussions about as we work on Move Forward Together Vermont, as we get ready to activate on the vision and priorities that are going to come out of the Move Forward Together Vermont process. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly. I'm going to share my screen and look at the outcomes that came out of that discussion in February, and just go over them really briefly, and then open it up to you all to discuss those outcomes, add to them, share your thoughts. So let me find that really quick. Great, and so you should be seeing a Word document on your screens.
We can see it.
Perfect, thank you. So I've separated, the discussion was pretty broad in, it was pretty broad. And so what I did with the notes is I split them into suggestions for VOREC's program structure, purpose, and needs, as well as strategies to coordinate the networks, and the network being our network of partners in working on outdoor recreation in Vermont. Some of the suggestions or reflections that people had on the structure of the VOREC program included, that VOREC is, we've been leaning in a lot on the VOREC Community Grant Program over the past several years, but we are more than a community grants program. We're a convening body. We have an avenue for attracting new outdoor businesses to Vermont. We're a vehicle for Vermont's regional planning commissions to provide regional support for outdoor recreation and economic development. And we're also a vehicle for connecting public, private, and agency partners to the governor and the legislature. There are opportunities for VOREC to create a clear purpose statement and measurable objectives. There's a couple of ideas for how we might go about creating that purpose statement and measurable objectives underneath that bullet, including that, VOREC can be responsible for creating a toolkit for communities. Communities and support for communities have been a really large part of our work. There's also this idea of exploring the formation of meta committees, committees that might be would convene stakeholders in different areas of interest throughout Vermont's outdoor recreation space. The idea of providing a stipend for mileage reimbursement for participation on the steering committee came up, especially to engage new steering committee members who might not be able to volunteer their time. And this one I added because it came up during our a previous steering committee meeting in October about looking at the VOREC pillars and really taking a critical eye, looking with that at a critical eye to separate actions from ways of doing work. Some of the strategies for coordinating the network were also really interesting. We talked about VOREC being able to develop a framework for regular, predictable communication that would help inform stakeholders throughout Vermont's outdoor recreation space. So there were questions about what would that look like? How could steering committee members ensure some of that predictable communication? There was an idea for VOREC to maybe host a podcast or be a part of creating a magazine that went out on a regular basis. Another strategy included developing an inventory of outdoor recreation partners, their expertise and capacity, as well as, we've been talking a lot about the value of an outdoor recreation economic impact study. That also came up, being able to do that consistently and on a regular basis and being a hub of that outdoor recreation economic impact data. And then lastly, another strategy we talked about was developing succinct talking points about Vermont's outdoor recreation economy and how it works, which could be organized underneath VOREC's pillars. Great, so I'm going to stop talking, and if it's helpful for me to keep sharing my screen, I can, but I'd also like for us all to be able to see each other. And I want to turn the floor over to you. For folks who are there, I'm wondering, are there things that we discussed that we're missing here? If you'd like to add anything from your reflections on the conversation we had. And for folks who weren't there, I'm also curious, what your thoughts are, what stood out to you about the notes from that conversation, and any other ideas there might be about how we prepare for activating on the vision and priorities at the end of this year. Yeah, Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that summary. It was a good encapsulation of that conversation, which was a really sort of pencils down, everybody kind of brainstorming and being creative, and I think what was included in there that stuck out was this idea of how do we communicate the conversations at VOREC to a broader audience somehow, and I think that's where that podcast or print effort in some way came up. And although what was kind of missing from the summary is, the value for VOREC for me in terms of the stories that I've sort of heard and listened to, sometimes it's the big picture, like move forward together, Vermont kind of stuff, but often it's these really small, interesting things that come in. And I, sometimes with the move forward effort, it's such a broad thing. And at the same point, we can't forget all the great small stories that are involved in this process as well, and sort of giving those some oxygen as well. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't want, I think the small stories are the ones that inspire people the most. And the big stories are the ones where we kind of need their help the most.
Great, thanks, Drew. Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Just wanted to tee up something that I don't think we got a chance to cover at the last meeting. It's just kind of this broader issue of governance and steering member transition. I think June will be 7 years for some of us. That's a long time, and just making sure that we're really thoughtful and deliberate about what that mechanism is for transitioning people out and bringing in new voices, new perspectives. I think we all recognize like governance isn't the most exciting thing. We probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but it's super important, and you tend to get the best results when we put the best effort in. So I just encourage us as a steering committee to spend some time on governance, and particularly related to transition planning, as some folks are probably ready to move on and open space for others.
Thanks for bringing that up, Mike. Becca.
Thanks, Jackie. I just want to build on what Mike brought up and ask if those of you on the steering committee have experience with what it looks like to go through a transition that Move Forward Together Vermont could represent, as far as updating actions and a vision and set of priorities for Vermont, what it looks like to have some of that institutional knowledge carry over, but also seeding that new set of priorities and a vision with new people and new ideas. Do folks have experience with that, or stories to share that could help inform how we might approach that?
I don't have a story on that. I don't have a story on that, but I have a parallel that might in the brainstorming thing. I mean, I think in any retail business, any outdoor retailer, talk about an outdoor shop, I mean, we can have the big brand names and things like that, but what really kind of keeps the ability of those big brand names to make everything happen is the discovery of new products and new things to put in there. And I think for us to kind of use that discovery concept on bringing new people in, I think we need to cast a wide net, and not be totally locked in as much to, some of the roles that we have these silos that we have to fill on VOREC, and have to figure out a way that maybe we can bend some of those to allow us to tap in. Because at the same point, while I really like the idea of having equal representation in all sectors, what I really want to see as we bring in more members is energy and enthusiasm and, and activity. That's, because that can help the existing members as much as anything else if somebody comes in as a bright burning candle.
Great point. Did others have thoughts to add to that? I think we have a lot of folks in our network that may or may not have experience here, so we can delve into this more deeply.
Definitely. Heather, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I want to build on what Drew just said. I think that whether it's through communications or through our work, it's this idea of like bringing in other voices, and it just kind of made me think about like listening sessions or something like that. So I think it's as important for us to think about like the time we spend together to really hone in on the organization and what we're doing, but having those, and I think this group is great about making spaces for conversations and other people to join in. But if we could somehow work in a regular schedule of we have the Moving Forward Together process, which is great for that. But even for partners to reflect on the work we're doing and our priorities representing them, given the fact that the steering committee is just a small amount of people. So just want to note that.
Awesome. Thanks, Heather. Carrie, go ahead.
I think Heather's suggestion is excellent, and we should, pick particular topics and target particular groups that we want to hear from. So we're not just doing this sort of broad-based, make it kind of issue and kind of relevant in the moment perspective. I wanted to just share one, I took over my position 10 years ago and, took over an organization in full swing. And I can't emphasize enough how important it was for me to go around and understand the landscape before I started running with things. And then once I understood that, I had a lot of things to do. Back to what Drew said, though, you don't want to curtail burning fires and strong voices with inspired ideas. And at the same time, what Mike said, we don't want people to get tired and burn out. Should we institute some kind of term limit here? And in order to ensure that we can get new voices, it's hard to turn your back on really strong leadership because we've got amazing people who are at this table and have been at this table. But, are we missing out on, a contribution that we could be benefiting from? And once you spin off, you can still be an advisor.
Definitely. And we do have terms, right? There's the 2-year cycle. There's no real limit to how many times you can turn over that 2-year cycle. So that's certainly something we can think about. And especially as we, this does feel like a phase, a sort of transition into a new phase of the way that we do work. And I think recognizing that to date, it's been so helpful to have that historical knowledge, from the creation and founding of VOREC as a program to now, we've needed that historical knowledge to get to this point. And so I think the question is, what does that, what does it look like moving forward? How do we activate on this vision and priorities and make sure we have a steering committee that's able to support that, has energy coming in and fueling that work?
Yeah, I know my board has term limits. You can't serve more than 3 terms, but we also try to make that turnaround be no more than a third of the board at a time, so that you have some new voices and some older voices to kind of mesh together and educate each other.
That's super helpful. Anyone else, things that stood out to you about the notes from the conversation we had in February? Any other ideas related to transition of steering committee members? I'm also curious to hear from some folks who weren't able to join that conversation in February. If you have other ideas that are coming up for you in listening to this conversation. And just noting, and Shelby, welcome. Glad you could join us and listen in. Sorry, I don't know when you jumped on, but Shelby, Frank, or Jean, I know you weren't able to make that conversation in February and would love to hear any of your thoughts.
I just read them all, and I think they're all great. Ideas as to how to keep VOREC going, and maybe not with we're probably not going to get the funding we used to get. So I think these are all great ideas, and I don't really have anything to expand on it at the moment. But if I do, I'll let you know.
Jean or Shelby, anything to add? Seeing a head shake from Jean.
Shelby here.
Looks good to me.
Shelby, go ahead.
Great. Yeah. Hi, everyone. And sorry to miss the bulk of the top of the meeting. I think the 2 things that are top of mind for me is reinforcing the I think what you capture here is an economic benefits kind of report or something, and a mental model I have that may not be entirely overlapping in its in VOREC's ability to execute on this, but the early education campaign in Vermont really rolled out a blue ribbon report early on in the formation of Let's Grow Kids, and as a policy push, and I think that had a huge influence in sort of shaping what the conversation was, obviously legislatively, and I find myself kind of thinking there's an analog for outdoor recreation opportunity that kind of knits together what I think we call the pillars of VOREC, but it is a multi-sector suite of issues, right? And so I'm very supportive of that, and it relates to the second point and maybe we need to do a little learning and listening about those involved in that, and how much of a policy-oriented exercise it really is versus multi-sector communication strategy. But it leads to the second point, which is more of a question, which is move forward together will be a defining kind of strategy element for VOREC moving forward. But does it actually cover issues of workforce and conservation and some other, or maybe economic development? And so how, and I may be missing some categories or buckets there. So that's, I don't actually know the answer to that. So I'm kind of curious, like how overlapping as a strategy is moving forward together with the full suite of priorities that VOREC has. And do we want to kind of be mindful of where there may be gaps and how to continue tending to those gaps. So those are my two observations, but I think it sounds like a really robust discussion back in February. Sorry to have missed it. And I think that the questions about governance, you know, board rollover are all totally foundational to, you know, how the health of the steering committee as it moves forward. So just really reinforce that there's a place for all of that as well. That's all for me.
Thanks, Shelby. Yeah, and we should definitely be looking for places where there's gaps. I think just to address the question about Move Forward Together Vermont, and I think you'll note this when you receive the pre-meeting materials, but we do intend for, you know, workforce, career development, conservation. We had a whole focus group with stakeholders from the conservation community. We do intend for that to be part of the vision and priority setting that we're doing, especially, you know, we're talking about outdoor recreation economy, well, outdoor recreation with Move Forward Together Vermont, but we're also thinking as VOREC about outdoor recreation economy. And those are all overlapping things that we think about in this space. So we really did try and get and capture feedback from those various different elements in the work that we did. And I think you'll be able to see that a little bit more clearly when you get the pre-meeting materials that we'll be sending out on the 22nd.
That's great. Thanks for clarifying that, Jackie. And so just to kind of repeat back, what I'm hearing is that it really is designed to be this kind of comprehensive strategy, inclusive of all current pillars.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Great. Any other thoughts, comments before I move us on?
Drew made note that he had one, but he didn't want to prevent
right.
anybody else that hasn't spoken.
Thanks for the reminder, Becca. Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, it was just, it's a relatively small thought, but it's kind of on the topic of board engagement, and as well as those sort of micro stories that are so valuable. And something we've started doing with VOBA, with our board meetings, is a selection of one person to sort of a board member to kick off the meeting with a little bit of the view from their world. And, you know, perhaps moving forward with VOREC meetings, you know, we have the official reports, you know, from various departments and trails and greenways. It would be great to have one VOREC board member also include just something that's outdoor recreation related, hot topic in their world, you know, just as a chance to share, as well as to kind of ground the meeting in the reality, the view from the ground, as well as all the high level reports that we get. So just a quick thought there.
I love that idea, Drew. Thanks for sharing it. All right, so just as I said, this conversation is one that I intend for us to continue to have this year. A next step that I've thought about is continuing this conversation during our June meeting, where we'll be in person, that's the second Friday in June, we'll have a little more time on the agenda and we'll be in person, so a little more opportunity to talk with each other face to face. I'd love for us to start digging into some of these suggestions that have come up between the February meeting and what we talked about during our time this morning, and really start to think about, like, what is VOREC's purpose statement? What are our objectives? What would it start to look like to take on some of these strategies for convening the network? So that's my proposal, is that we do some of that work in June. We do have some support through the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, and I've already floated that sort of idea to them to help support a little bit more of this conversation and digging into it in a little more detail. So I hope you like the idea of that. Feel free to reach out to me directly and let me know your thoughts, or anything else that you might think we would want to cover in digging into some of these ideas that we've been exploring over the past few months. So with that, we're going to start to wrap up our time. We have about 7 minutes left together, and I want to I know we've had a number of people listening in. I just want to open the floor up for public comment. If anyone who's not on the steering committee wants to share anything with steering committee members, comments, questions from the meeting. Yeah, go ahead, Ellen.
Sorry to take any time at the very end of the meeting, but I've been through a lot of meetings like this. I've been through a lot of discussions like this. I was probably having discussions like this before some of you were even born. And I must admit, this is by far the most impressive collection of strong professionals, committed, sort of topic types, committed enthusiasts, if you will, and collaborative mindsets that I have experienced in all the disasters I've worked on. You guys really need to pat yourselves on the back for just being collaborative and determined and probably a little stubborn, but you have a very impressive collection of people who actually know what's going on, who are working at levels that really do enable them to stay well informed from the top. Don't lose that in your efforts to, restaff boards or whatever else. But hearty congratulations. It's been a great pleasure to listen to this for 2 hours. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks, Alan. Really appreciate that. Anyone else? I'm looking for other hands or people unmuting. All right. Any other business that we didn't cover through the business meeting, through our updates on Move Forward Together Vermont? Any questions about events that are coming up, or highlights people want to share about events coming up that we didn't get to cover? I love what Drew said about highlighting, things that are happening in people's, more local events, smaller events that might not be statewide. So if anyone has any of those, I'd love to hear about them.
There's this coming weekend, there's the revival of a legendary event in the Mad River Valley called the Mad River Triathlon, the state's only 4-event triathlon. Drew's wife, Bear, will be one of the commentators. I am managing the water leg. It's a really cool collaboration. It's been revived by a group of local trail organizations, the Mad River Path, the Mad River Riders, the Mad Marathon, Mad River Sports, and the Friends of the Mad River. I'm just purely volunteering as an individual, not as NFCT, but it's a really cool community event, very well loved by many, and we're all excited to kind of relaunch this tradition.
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie. Claire dropped a note in the chat, which is great, about watching for amphibians crossing roads with all the rain. We have a colleague who's helping amphibians cross the road in the evening. Just stay highly visible. Shelby.
Yeah, it's a minor mention, but I thought I would forward along to this group by email a report that came out, I think just yesterday or day before, from a policy think tank called the Center for American Progress around state strategies to advance 30 by 30, conservation of 30% of the US lands and waters by 2030. And that ties into state actions in this state, which is, I think, a leader among states. And it may be of interest to folks. I think woven through everything from the Biden-Harris administration, big picture strategy all the way through state-specific examples is a very, very, very strong overlap with equitable access to the out-of-doors throughout the whole 30 by 30 conversation and a lot of the examples. So I'll send that around to you all to dig into if it's of interest.
That sounds really interesting, Shelby. Yeah, looking forward to digging into that.
I just Googled it. I couldn't even wait for you to distribute it, Shelby.
All right. Any other last business before we depart? Frank, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the brainstorming sheet there and the 30 by 30 and 50 by 50 initiative. I think one of the things, VOREC could be helpful with moving forward is almost being maybe ambassadors of sorts to, as land is purchased, maybe some of these nonprofit land conservation groups that don't necessarily share our philosophies on recreation, maybe find a way to help them understand the importance of our recreational assets and strive to keep them from being closed. Is that making sense? I know some of that goes on with VHCB, but it might be VOREC. I could see VOREC being kind of the intermediate between the general populace, the trail groups, and some of these purchases that may be coming in the future. Just a thought.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. I'll add that to our notes about how we activate on the vision and priorities. Great. All right. Well, thank you all for this robust discussion this morning. As always, really impressed by you all and really glad that you continue to commit to making these bi-monthly meetings. Really appreciate all of your input. Like I said, I'm going to be getting ready for our in-person meeting in June. But before then, we have our May 1st Vision and Priorities Summit. I'll send around that poll, which Claire also dropped in the chat, and look forward to seeing as many of you at that meeting as possible. I think it's going to be a really great, inspiring day. So see you all in May, and if not in May, in June. And with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely weekend.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.